Watch a crowded room closely. One man works every corner, handshake after handshake after handshake. He needs this room badly. Now watch the other man. He barely moves at all. People drift toward him instead. Nobody asked him to work. Machiavelli knew this centuries ago. The chaser always pays more. This isn't networking advice today. This is a direct warning. Chasing connections signals only one thing: weakness dressed up as ambition. This video breaks that pattern down and shows what earns access instead. Every founder, every rising trader, every man climbing toward money has been fed the same comforting lie: that success is built one contact at a time, in the right room, at the right event, working a crowd the way a farmer works a field, methodically, tirelessly, one handshake standing in for one seed planted. Machiavelli would have laughed at that picture, quietly, the way a man laughs at a mistake he watched 100 courtiers make before him. He spent his life studying princes and the men who orbited them, and he noticed the same pattern repeat in every single court he examined. The men who ran after favor lost it, publicly, painfully, again and again. The men who let favor come looking for them kept it and grew richer for the keeping. This isn't a video about how to work a room better. It is a warning against the room itself, against the entire instinct that tells you value gets built by collecting names, trading cards, and mingling harder than the man standing 3 feet away from you. Indiscriminate networking, the kind that treats every gathering as a hunting ground and every stranger as a contact to be bagged before the night ends, does not build status. It quietly dismantles it. One eager handshake at a time, in front of a room that is reading every single one of those handshakes far more carefully than you think. By the time this video ends, you will understand why chasing connections broadcasts exactly the weakness it is trying to hide. You will understand the asymmetry between who chases and who is chased, and why that asymmetry decides almost everything about how a relationship eventually pays out. You will understand why one relationship built with patience will outproduce 100 collected in a single frantic night, why visible eagerness quietly lowers your own price before a single word of business is ever discussed, and what actually earns access once you stop working the room and let the room start working for you instead. The room that already decided who chases. Long before anyone in a crowded room exchanges a single meaningful sentence, the room has already made its first judgment, and that judgment is rarely reversed by anything said afterward. Picture 2 men arriving at the same gathering on the same evening, both ambitious, both genuinely capable, both hoping the night produces something worth remembering. The first treats the room as a field to be harvested. He moves fast, introduces himself to everyone within reach, collects a pocket full of cards before the first hour ends, and repeats his own name so many times it starts to sound rehearsed even to him. The second man does almost the opposite. He finds one conversation that interests him and stays in it, unhurried, asking real questions rather than performing interest, entirely comfortable being one of the least visible people in the room. By the end of the night, something has happened that neither man consciously orchestrated. The first man is remembered, vaguely, as the person who was everywhere, talking to everyone, needing something from the room that the room never quite identified. The second man is remembered specifically by the 1 or 2 people who actually spoke with him as someone worth speaking with again. Machiavelli built an entire theory of statecraft around exactly this asymmetry. A prince who visibly begs for an alliance has already weakened himself by the begging, regardless of what he is offering in return, because the request itself reveals that he needs the alliance more than the ally needs him. The room performs the identical calculation on a smaller, quieter scale every single time it gathers. Whoever is visibly working, the room has already told the room how much he needs it. Whoever is not working, it has told the room nothing at all, which, in a room built entirely on reading signals, is its own kind of loud. This is not a claim that stillness alone guarantees anything. A man who stands in the corner saying nothing of value learns nothing and offers nothing, and the room correctly ignores him too. The distinction that matters is not motion versus stillness. It is chasing versus being chased. And chasing is what collapses the value of everything that follows it, no matter how much charm gets spent trying to disguise it. The price every handshake quietly pays. Every market obeys the same law, whether the goods being traded are grain, gold, or attention, and the law is brutally simple. Abundance lowers price, scarcity raises it. A merchant who stands in the square shouting his own name at every passerby, desperate for a single buyer to notice him, has already told the entire market exactly how little demand exists for what he is selling. A merchant who keeps his door closed except to the customers who seek him out specifically has told the same market the opposite, without saying a single word about price. Networking, treated as a volume game, is the handshake version of the shouting merchant. Every additional contact, chased in a single evening, dilutes the value of the ones that came before it, because the room is not counting your enthusiasm, it is counting your saturation. A man who introduces himself to 40 strangers in one night has, by the 40th introduction, revealed that none of the previous 39 were special enough to hold his full attention, and the 40th stranger reads this instantly, even if he cannot name what he is reading. He simply feels, correctly, that he is one of many, and being one of many is the fastest way to be forgotten by morning. Contrast this with a different kind of man, one who is genuinely selective about which rooms he enters and which conversations he pursues to any depth. When he does extend attention to someone, it reads as exactly what it is, a scarce resource, deliberately spent, not an automatic reflex fired at anyone within reach. The same warmth, the same genuine interest, the same handshake, carries an entirely different price depending on how freely it was handed out beforehand. Machiavelli understood that a prince's favor meant nothing once it was granted indiscriminately to every petitioner who asked for it, and that the wisest rulers rationed their attention precisely so that receiving it would still mean something. Your attention in a crowded room works by the identical mechanism. Spend it on everyone, and it is worth what free things are always worth. Spend it rarely and deliberately, and it starts to behave like currency instead of noise. One relationship worth more than 100. There is a specific kind of man who leaves every conference, every mixer, every industry dinner with a stack of business cards thick enough to require a rubber band, and genuinely believes the thickness of that stack is evidence of progress. 10 years later, that stack has produced almost nothing, because a card collected in passing was never a relationship to begin with. It was a transaction that stopped the moment both hands let go. Compare him to a man who leaves the same decade of gatherings with almost no cards at all, but with 3 or 4 relationships that have deepened year over year into genuine trust. The kind where a phone call gets answered immediately and a favor gets extended without hesitation because both sides have already proven, repeatedly, over years, that the relationship survives being tested. One of history's great banking dynasties did not build a financial empire that reshaped an entire era of Europe by collecting the largest number of acquaintances in Florence. It built that empire on a small number of relationships, cultivated with extraordinary patience, that eventually controlled more real leverage than 1,000 shallow connections ever could have produced. Depth compounds. Breadth, on its own, does not. This is the arithmetic almost nobody does honestly. 100 shallow contacts, each contributing essentially nothing when a real need arises, sum to approximately nothing. One deep relationship, built over years and tested by at least one genuine crisis along the way, can single-handedly change the entire trajectory of a career, a business, or a fortune. The instinct to collect widely is not wrong because breadth has no value at all. It is wrong because it consumes the same finite resource, time and attention, that depth requires, and depth is where the actual return lies. A field planted an inch deep across 100 acres produces less than a single acre planted properly and tended for years. Most men mistake the size of the field for the size of the harvest and spend a decade discovering the difference the hard way. The eagerness that lowers your value. There is a particular kind of visible eagerness that a room reads instantly. And it has almost nothing to do with what a person actually says. It shows up in the pace of the follow-up message sent the morning after a first meeting, in how quickly a man agrees to whatever time or place is proposed, in how many times he mentions the same opportunity in a single conversation because silence about it feels unbearable. None of this eagerness is dishonest. It is simply expensive, spent in a currency the eager man does not realize he is spending at all. Picture two men who meet the same potential partner at the same event and both walk away genuinely excited about a possible collaboration. The first sends a message within the hour, proposes 3 separate meeting times before receiving a single reply, and mentions the opportunity to 3 mutual acquaintances the following week in the hope that word travels back favorably. The second sends a single, brief, well-considered message 2 days later, leaves the timeline open, and says nothing further to anyone. Nothing about the underlying opportunity has changed between these two approaches. Only the signal has changed, and the signal is what the room, and specifically the potential partner, will actually remember and price accordingly. The first man has told the partner, without meaning to, that this deal matters more to him than it matters to the room at large. The second man has told the partner nothing except that he is a person who does not chase. And a person who does not chase is, by the strange arithmetic of status, a person other people begin to chase instead. This works the same way a predator reads a limping animal in a herd from 100 yards away, instantly, without effort, and prices its next move accordingly. Visible need is the limp. It cannot be fully hidden by charm, because charm is a performance layered on top of behavior, and the behavior itself, the frequency of the follow-up, the speed of the yes, the repetition of the ask, is what actually leaks the signal. The fix is not learning to fake calm convincingly. It is removing the actual need to chase, which only happens once you have built something that makes chasing unnecessary in the first place. Even the seating in a room performs this arithmetic. A man who arrives early hovers near the door and repositions himself 3 times to end up beside whichever guest seems most important has, by the third repositioning, made his intentions embarrassingly obvious to everyone watching, including the very guest he is maneuvering toward. A man who sits down once, in whatever seat is nearest, and lets the conversation come to him wherever it happens to land, never once telegraphs a target. He is available to be interesting to whoever ends up beside him, rather than transparently auditioning for one particular seat, and a room reads the difference between those two postures in seconds, long before either man has said a word worth remembering. What the powerful actually do instead. The most genuinely powerful men in any industry are, almost without exception, poor conventional networkers. They do not attend every event. They do not maintain sprawling contact lists. Many of them are, by the standards of an eager young professional working every room in the city, socially inaccessible, difficult to reach, uninterested in small talk with strangers. And yet these are precisely the men whose phone calls get returned first, whose names open doors that stay firmly shut to everyone else, whose introductions carry more weight than 100 cold outreach messages combined. The explanation is not mystery, it is mechanism. These men stopped seeking access decades earlier and started building the kind of value that makes access seek them instead. A surgeon renowned for solving the cases other surgeons does not need to attend medical mixers hoping to be noticed. The cases arrive at his door because his reputation has already done the traveling his physical presence would otherwise have had to do. A financier known for consistently identifying the right opportunity years before the market catches on does not need to chase capital. Capital finds him because word of his judgment moves faster and further than any handshake ever could. This is the deepest reversal indiscriminate networking gets backward. Conventional networking assumes access is built by increasing the surface area of your own outreach, more events, more introductions, more messages sent into the world hoping something returns. Genuine power is built by increasing the surface area of your own value, so that the world's outreach starts arriving at your door unbidden. Machiavelli observed that a prince who is feared and respected for genuine strength rarely needs to beg for alliances, because other princes calculate that an alliance with him is worth pursuing on their own initiative. The same calculation runs quietly through every industry today. Build something rare enough, and the room reorganizes itself around you without you ever having to work it. Scarcity as a deliberate strategy. Scarcity is not an accident that happens to successful people after the fact. It is frequently a deliberate discipline, chosen and maintained on purpose, long before the success that makes it look effortless in hindsight. A man who says yes to every meeting, every call, every invitation is not being generous. He is flooding his own market with his own availability, and availability, like anything else traded in unlimited supply, stops carrying a price. Consider a craftsman whose workshop produces a limited number of pieces each year, refusing additional commissions once the year's capacity is spoken for, even when the money on offer is substantial. A rival across town accepts every commission that arrives, works longer hours, and earns a steady but unremarkable living. 10 years later, the first craftsman's waiting list stretches years into the future, and his pieces command a price the second craftsman's work will never approach, not because the underlying skill differs so dramatically, but because scarcity itself became part of what the first craftsman was actually selling. People do not simply want the object. They want what limited availability of the object signals about its worth. The same discipline applies directly to relationships and access. A man who is available to absolutely everyone at any hour for any request has made himself the equivalent of the rival craftsman who accepts every commission. His time carries no premium because he has demonstrated through pure behavior that it requires no premium to obtain. A man who is genuinely selective, who says no more often than he says yes, who protects a short list of relationships worth the depth they receive rather than spreading himself thin across a long one, builds the exact opposite reputation. This is not coldness for its own sake, and it is not a performance of unavailability designed purely to manipulate perception, which collapses the moment it is tested, the same way a costume collapses under real pressure. It is the simple, disciplined refusal to treat your own attention as an unlimited resource, because the moment you treat it that way, the market agrees with you and prices it at zero. The founder who attended every dinner. Picture two young founders launching almost identical companies in the same city within the same month, both chasing the same pool of investors, both convinced that access to capital is fundamentally a networking problem to be solved through sheer volume of effort. The first founder treats his calendar as a weapon. He attends every dinner, every panel, every after-party where an investor might plausibly be standing near the bar, and he leaves each one having exchanged a dozen new numbers he will email within the week. 18 months into building his company, he has attended over 100 such events and can recite the layout of every private dining room in the city from memory. His product, in the meantime, has barely moved forward, because the hours spent chasing capital are hours that were never spent building the thing capital is supposed to be funding. The second founder attends almost nothing in that same 18 months. He tells the handful of people who ask that he is heads down, building, and means it literally. He ships something rough, then something better, then something genuinely good. And he talks about the product itself far more than he talks about himself. He does not court a single investor directly. Instead, word of what he has built starts moving through the same small circle the first founder has been chasing at every dinner, except it arrives at that circle as a rumor about a product worth watching rather than as a pitch delivered over a canapé. By month 20, the second founder receives an unsolicited introduction from an investor who heard about the product from someone else entirely, arrives at the meeting having done nothing to manufacture the opportunity, and closes a round on terms the first founder, still working the circuit, has never once been offered. The first founder is not lazy, and he is not untalented. He has simply spent 18 months paying the chaser's price, over and over, in a currency that never once converted into the thing he actually needed. Machiavelli would have recognized the mistake instantly because he warned against exactly this substitution centuries earlier. Courting favor is not the same activity as earning it, no matter how closely the two can resemble each other from the outside, and only one of them actually compounds. The difference between building and collecting. There is a meaningful difference between building a relationship and collecting one, and indiscriminate networking almost always defaults to the second without the person doing it ever noticing the substitution has happened. Collecting is transactional by nature. It asks what can be extracted from this contact today, whether that is an introduction, a favor, a piece of information, or simply the appearance of a larger network. Building is patient by nature. It asks nothing in the first several encounters beyond genuine curiosity about the other person, and trusts that value, if it exists at all, will surface naturally over time rather than being extracted on demand in the first conversation. Picture a warehouse stacked floor to ceiling with boxes, each one a contact collected at some event, most of them never opened again, gathering dust, technically present but functionally worthless. Now picture a single orchard, tended carefully across many seasons, pruned when it needed pruning, watered through the dry years, producing more fruit with each passing season because the roots have had time to actually establish themselves in the ground. The warehouse looks, from the outside, more impressive. It has more boxes than the orchard has trees, but a warehouse of unopened boxes produces nothing at harvest time, while a single well-tended orchard feeds a household for decades. Machiavelli warned princes against the trap of mistaking the appearance of a large alliance network for the substance of actual loyalty, because an ally acquired cheaply and quickly is abandoned just as cheaply and quickly the moment it becomes inconvenient to honor. The same warning applies to every business card gathered in a single frantic evening. A relationship built on nothing more than a shared elevator ride, and an exchanged phone number has no roots at all, and roots are the only thing that hold when the wind actually blows. The instinct to collect widely feels, in the moment, like progress, because a growing pile of contacts is easy to measure and easy to feel good about. Depth is much harder to measure and takes far longer to show results, which is exactly why so few people commit to it, and exactly why the few who do end up owning most of the real leverage in any given room. Becoming the room people enter. At some point, the entire orientation has to flip, from a man seeking rooms to a man other people seek out, and that flip does not happen through better networking technique. It happens through the unglamorous work of becoming genuinely valuable enough in some specific, recognizable way that seeking you out is the rational move for other people to make on their own initiative. This is slower and far less visible than working a room ever is. A tradesman who spends years perfecting a craft nobody else in the city can match is not doing anything that looks, from month to month, like networking at all. He is simply working, quietly, refining, building a body of results that eventually starts speaking on his behalf without him needing to attend a single event to make the case himself. A rich merchant does not build his trading empire by standing in the market square, shaking every hand that passes. He builds it by becoming the merchant whose goods are simply better, whose word is simply more reliable, whose deals simply close more cleanly than anyone else's, until other merchants and buyers start arranging themselves around him rather than the reverse. This is the actual mechanism behind every story of a person who seems to have connections appear effortlessly, as though the universe simply handed them access other people had to fight for. It rarely was effortless. It was built, patiently, out of view, in the years before anyone was watching closely enough to notice the construction happening. By the time the value becomes visible, the access appears to arrive on its own, and to an observer who only sees the final stage, it genuinely looks like magic, like the man simply knows the right people through some unearned stroke of luck. What actually happened is that the room reorganized itself around a value that had already been built, quietly, long before the room noticed there was anything worth reorganizing around. The discipline of staying still. The hardest part of this entire argument is not understanding it. It is tolerating the years it takes to work, because staying still while building value looks, from the outside and often from the inside too, indistinguishable from doing nothing at all. This is exactly where most men abandon the strategy before it has had time to pay off. Picture two men at the exact same starting point, both ambitious, both with roughly the same modest reputation in their field. The first chooses the fast path. He attends every event, joins every group, sends a steady stream of outreach messages, and measures his progress by the size of his growing contact list. For a while, this feels like momentum, because activity always feels like progress, even when it is not producing anything durable. The second man chooses the slower, far less visible path. He attends almost nothing in the first several years, and instead pours the same hours into becoming genuinely excellent at the one thing his field actually rewards, tolerating long stretches where nothing about his position appears to be changing at all. 5 years in, the first man has an enormous contact list and almost nothing durable to show for it, still working every room he enters, still chasing the next introduction, exhausted by an activity that never seems to convert into anything lasting. The second man has built something specific and rare enough that people have quietly begun asking around about him, without him ever having asked anyone for anything. 10 years in, the gap has become unmistakable. The first man is still networking, at the same pace, for the same uncertain return, permanently a supplicant in every room he enters. The second man barely attends anything anymore, because the rooms that matter have started arranging invitations specifically for him. Machiavelli's princes who endured, who built states that outlasted their own lifetimes, were rarely the ones who spent their reigns anxiously courting every neighboring court. They were the ones who built genuine strength first, quietly, and let the courting flow toward them once that strength became undeniable. The man the room cannot stop watching. There is a specific kind of man a room cannot accurately read, because he does not need anything the room is offering badly enough for that need to leak through his posture, his pace, or his handshake. This is not arrogance, and it is not coldness performed for effect. It is the simple, earned byproduct of having spent years building something real instead of spending those same years working every crowd he could find his way into. This is the man who is introduced around a room within minutes of arriving, not because he worked to make it happen, but because the people already inside the room calibrate toward whoever looks least like they are waiting for permission to belong. This is the man whose single relationships, built slowly and tested honestly, outperform an entire stack of collected cards belonging to men who worked twice as many rooms as he ever did. This is the man whose scarcity was never a performance, because there was always a real foundation of value underneath it, holding the whole posture up without requiring constant maintenance. None of this arrived by accident, and none of it arrived quickly. It arrived through the unglamorous, compounding choice to stop chasing every room and start building something worth being sought for instead, made consistently, across years nobody else was paying close attention to. Chasing connections was never really the fastest way to build access. It was the fastest way to announce, to every room you entered, exactly how much you needed, what that room had to offer, and a room never forgets a signal like that, even when it forgets your name by morning. Stop working every room you enter. Start building the kind of value that makes rooms want to work for you instead. The chase was always the cheapest thing you could offer. Scarcity, earned honestly, is worth more than every business card you will ever collect combined. If this changed the way you see the rooms you walk into and the hands you shake inside them, then don't stop here, because what you've heard in this video is only the surface. There are deeper layers to psychology, influence, and wealth that simply can't be explored fully in one video. Not because they don't exist, but because most people aren't ready to hear them. That's why most stay average. If you're not one of them, then subscribe, because every video here is designed to sharpen your mindset, increase your value, and separate you from the crowd. No fluff, no noise, just strategy. Most people will watch this and move on. A few will stay and change. Decide which one you are.